I think the building relationships, having a support network is very important, both in one's personal life as well as in one's professional life. So just talking in a professional context, one's career tends to be pretty difficult to navigate. It's very difficult to figure out what is the right decision to take at different points in one's career. It's not clear, what will differentiate one from success or from failure. And then, often one faces dilemmas. Actually, if you sit back and think about the kinds of questions one faces, most all of them someone has faced, before us. And so we might as well leverage from their experience. Why not, right? And so I think, creating relationships so that you can have somebody mentor you or even better sponsor you can make a tremendous difference in one's career. I'm reminded of what Hillary Clinton said, when she said it takes a village to raise a child. I think, in order for us to have a successful career, we want to have a community of support around us. And, that community could include one's spouse, one's extended family, if one has, an extended family around, hired help, friends, it doesn't matter. I think one needs to have a community of support structure around one, because without that, it just makes things very, very difficult. So having, an understanding, supportive spouse is critical. And so, if you find yourself in a position at a time in your life, when you can still make that decision, give it a lot of thought, because it is one of the most important career decisions that you're going to make. And then after that, seek help from others. Don't try to do everything yourself, because it is a lot, and it can feel overwhelming at times. And so the more help we can seek from others, the easier it makes things. Yeah, I'll tell you what worked for me, because I too am a shy person. And I too have found that, I've had to sort of talk myself into networking. And what has helped me is to sort of think of it as work, just like, a project or a deliverable. I have to network because it is a part of doing work. It is a part of creating the network at work that is going to support you. And so thinking of work helps. Looking for forums that give you a reason to go because you're interested in the topic, and using that to network, I think that has also helped me. I have recently joined a program where women are being mentored to be on corporate boards, and I got assigned a CEO of another company as a mentor. That is not something that I would have been able to do easily without joining that program, so that's an example. And then finally, I think, not going into networking with too structured an agenda, but just going into a relationship with curiosity and a desire to just understand the other person, I think will go a long ways for women to overcome their feeling that perhaps this is a waste of time. So interestingly, for me, the transition from the US to India has not been as difficult as I had feared and as others had led me to believe. have basically moved with Inter. I think that has helped a lot. I don't find that much of a difference in culture, particularly among employees who, and there are a fair number of those in Intel India who began their Intel career in the US and spent a good 10 to 12 years there before they came over here. Now I begin to see some cultural differences when I look at employees who began their career in Intel over here and have grown through the ranks. Interestingly, those cultural differences are actually very similar to the kind of issues that women say they face. So, there are communication challenges. There is, a sort of a lack of assertiveness, particularly when it comes to communication, when it comes to articulating one's viewpoint. There is perhaps an unhealthy deference for hierarchy. And I do see some of that over here, and it is something that I talk with employees frequently about, and it is something that I am actually creating an environment, creating a structure for employees to talk with each other about, and hence help them, well, first acknowledge and understand and then overcome. So, for example, we've just recently created a peer group where people can opt in. There will be a topic, such as influencing stakeholders, and peers will come together and share their experience in terms of what works, what doesn't, and through that help each other overcome what may be otherwise a cultural gap, for example. So these are some things that I find myself thinking about and taking on as challenges that perhaps I wouldn't have if I had been back in the US. But it is something that I am enjoying tremendously. I think it is a very interesting perspective on how to make Intel as a whole stronger and more inclusive. It's actually, we've just started it. We had our first session yesterday, and based on the feedback I saw, it seems like it was a real success. It seems like people who participated found it very engaging and a sort of a safe environment to talk about something that otherwise may have been quite difficult. Yeah, so if you look at diversity today, whether it's in the US or over here in India, I think generally speaking, there are lots of programs that corporations have embraced, and they are more or less all similar. And yet, when it comes to diversity, we've kind of all reached a point that we are finding very difficult to go beyond. And so I think, what will breakthrough look like? And how can we achieve it? And the thought that comes to my mind is that we will be able to break through if we are able to make it mainstream, make the cause mainstream. And there are three ways that, I've been able to think of so far. One is, instead of talking about diversity, maybe we should be talking about inclusiveness, about creating an environment that is truly inclusive, where we challenge all of our paradigms and assumptions. And we do have them. It's not just it's not just against one gender. I think they exist on all sides. And if we were able to create an environment in which we looked at that, I think we would promote inclusiveness, and through that, gender diversity as well. So that's one thought I have. The second thought is we should expand our solution space to include the men. For example, if we are giving, if we are looking for sponsors for women, why not include men as sponsors? After all, if most of the decision makers and executives in companies are men, it would make our solutions more effective to include the men. So that's the second thing. And then the third thought I have is, and I think to some extent we are doing that, but to approach it as a business imperative. Warren Buffett has said that we would not run our factories at 80% utilization. So why do we allow 50% of our workforce to not achieve its full potential, right? So make it a business imperative and drive it as such with goals and indicators and tracking and monitoring. Well, I think, the biggest advice that I would give to women is to empower themselves. Because I had attended a Simmons conference in Boston in 2012, and I heard Meg Whitman say in her keynote speech, opportunities are out there, the ceiling is where you put it. And I really believe that. I really believe that the problems that we face tend to be more of our making than we realize. And that if we empowered ourselves, we would actually find it much easier to surmount what feels like are insurmountable obstacles.